Anyways, Heartland Sports here. Wow, look how big this camera is. It's pretty cool. So basically today, we're gonna be looking at some NHL attendance numbers. Over the years, a lot of things have changed. Teams going up the list in terms of attendance, teams dropping down, which would be kind of surprising, and I'll review and you'll see. And obviously, teams that have relatively been staying near the top, despite despite how bad they've been doing the last 2 or 3 seasons. For example, the Chicago Blackhawks. But we'll get there in just a second. Let me just change some settings here. I just want to make sure the audio is not too loud here, so you can hear my voice clearly. Volume setting. All right. So I'm gonna let this game go ahead and sim itself while I talk about this. So we're gonna start with going over this past year's NHL attendance numbers. So I got them right here, pulled up on my phone. So we're kind of just gonna look at them, and I'm just gonna review the bottom five and the top five, for example. So we're gonna start with the top five. Of course, Pittsburgh scores already. So the top five, we have number one Chicago, averaging 21,000 fans. We have number two Montreal, number three Detroit, which would be one of the surprising ones. So would Chicago, I guess. Number four Minnesota, and number five Philadelphia. Now, Chicago. Let's just review these real quick. Chicago, for example, yeah, the team hasn't made the playoffs the last 2 or 3 seasons. They're struggling. They still got good players. Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews still on the team. Still got some legends that they had in the dynasty days back in 2010, 2013, 2015, and then it slacked off the last four seasons. But yeah, it's like one of the top. Since they're number one, it's like you think, oh, why the heck are they number one still? They've been 4 seasons have gone by. How have they have not at least dropped under the bottom five? Let's say, for example, because you're not going to drop all the way to the bottom five in the league if it's only been 4 or 5 seasons. But why haven't you dropped? And I want to say that's because obviously the fans won't give up on a team like Chicago, still having the players that can produce. Another Stanley Cup, even though they are aging. Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Duncan Keith. They brought back Shaw this past season, just as a kind of little, get back together. Trying to make another shot at this. So, yeah, Chicago's a team that's definitely still going to have it for a couple more years before their attendance would start going down if if they didn't make the playoffs again, or if they didn't play better in general. So Montreal. I mean, hockey is like Canada's number one sport, so there really isn't much to say there. They'll always have support around them, but not the bottom five Canadian team, which we'll talk about. Oh my God, I can't believe I just did this. So so the attendance, the numbers I'm going over now are not from this past season because it didn't make sense now that I think about it. Yeah, these are the numbers from the 2015-16 season. Which was the season right after the Chicago won the Cup. So now it makes sense. Now it makes sense why Chicago is in the top spot. And Detroit as well, being in the top three, because that may have been the first season or the last season of making the playoffs before they won the drought that they're kind of now. All right, so let's go to the bottom five of the 2015-16 season, which was 3 or 4 seasons ago. So we have at the bottom Carolina, averaging only 12,203 fans in the 2015-16 season. Now this is interesting. So Carolina, you'll definitely see this when we compare last year's results. Man, they're really getting physical in this game. Carolina was only averaging 12,000 fans on an average home game 4 seasons ago. Being number 30 in the NHL, obviously before Vegas came into the picture. And at that point, That was 2016. They had not played the playoffs um, for about 5 or 6 years, 5 or 6 seasons. So things weren't looking good. So that makes sense why they're at the bottom. Because Carolina, being a strong hockey town in the beginning, up until they won the Cup in '06, things kind of started to decline, and then they started to pick back up again, and then they just tanked. Um, and I'd say ever since after they won the Cup, they've been tanking. And all the times they've made the playoffs, even last year, for example, they've only gone to the conference finals or won the Cup like they did in '06 as the Hurricanes. Going up, number 29, we have the Arizona Coyotes, which at the same time, I'm pretty sure they haven't made the playoffs since 2011 or 2012. So they're starting to develop a drought even to this day. I might be wrong. That might be 2014 the last time they made the playoffs. But obviously these standings are from a season or two later. Averaging only 1,000 more, 13,433 roughly. So they're a team that obviously was struggling too, not only with the team itself, but the location of where they play. Obviously, they play in the same. Actually, I don't know if I don't think they play in the same arena that the Phoenix Suns play in, and it's kind of crazy because these two teams, in the city cannot agree on playing in one arena, which is kind of ridiculous. So we'll talk about Arizona more as we go look more modern, updated standings. The New York Islanders have number 28. They were doing good and bad here and throughout. Obviously, in the 80s is when they had those 4 Stanley Cups, which are huge for the franchise. But they've been up and down. They make the playoffs some years, they don't make it. They haven't really been a promising team in the playoffs, I guess you say, back in the 2015-16 time. But they're still a modern-day playoff team. Going up to the number 4 bottom from the line was Columbus, which was kind of a similar way. Columbus is kind of the team that always hung around the line for the playoffs. If they made it in, they just barely made it in. You look at last year, for example, they just made it in. But obviously, we're looking at 2015-16 here. And then you go up one more to New Jersey, which has kind of been at the bottom of the league the last couple of seasons. So that was the 2015 season. It's 2015-2016 season. Let's go up to this past season, right before this whole pandemic happened and everything this past month or two is kind of ravaging the whole world. Alright, so now the up-to-date standings obviously will make a lot more sense. So the top 2, obviously Chicago and Montreal, like I talked about earlier. Number 3, Dallas, which is slowly becoming a very dominant team in the league. Especially when they get into the playoffs. But even the regular season, they're really pounding it down and putting the pedal down after All-Star break to go towards the playoffs. Going down, number 4, we have Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, Toronto obviously has been struggling here and there, mainly when they meet the Bruins in the first round of the playoffs. Bruins have beat them 2-3 times in the past couple of years, and it's something they gotta get past. And I think I'm pretty sure they'll get past it eventually. They have the players to do that now. I mean, obviously with the acquisition of Tavares, and they have Austin Matthews and other really strong forwards and even defenders that can really hold up the team. The goaltending, I guess, you could say, is a little rough for Toronto. Boston's got more of a solid goaltending team with Halak and Rask being the main tendy. But alright, and then going down to the number 5 spot is Tampa Bay. Obviously, a huge embarrassment after last year's enter the playoffs when they got blown out by Columbus, which I just said barely made it into the playoffs last year. It's kind of embarrassing to go like that, and obviously they'll be making the playoffs this year. Hopefully the National Hockey League resumes play, looking like it might be July. We'll see how that goes, but hopefully they don't embarrass themselves. I mean, obviously no matter who wins the Cup this year, it's going to be a special win, and that team's going to definitely remember that because of this chaotic season that they've had. That was the top 5 of this past year, last season. Going down to the bottom 5. All these. Now, so the bottom 5, remember how I said a couple minutes ago, 5-6 minutes ago, The number one on the bottom, number 30th team at the time, obviously 31 now. The number 30th team at that time 5 seasons ago was Carolina. Carolina this past season is number 22, above some bigger teams such as Columbus, San Jose, and Winnipeg. Um, Obviously, the hugest thing that helped their attendance was the fact that they made the playoffs last year for the first time in practically a decade. Um, Rejuvenated the whole fan base, and everybody's on board now. If the season continues this year, it's looking like there's a good chance they can make the playoffs because they're in it right now. So their attendance might just keep going up a little more. It's definitely not going to get to the top. Like, this is Carolina. This is not Chicago. They'll probably, if they keep playing good the next couple of seasons and keep staying in the playoffs, they'll probably hover around the 15 to 20 mark. And if so, the thing is, kind of Carolina fan bases. It's like, Carolina is a relocation team from '97. Started playing Greensboro, North Carolina, 2 seasons, then eventually moved over to Raleigh, where they had that new arena built. So if the team starts missing the playoffs, like they did, for example, a couple seasons after they won the Cup back in '06, I mean, it's predicted that the fans are just going to tank. Obviously, that's with most other teams as well, unless you're a huge hockey city, for example, Chicago or Montreal. So they're number 22 out of 31 now, so definitely climbing the rope, averaging almost 17,000 fans. But anyways, let's look at the number 31 team on this list of last season's results, and Ottawa Senators. Is it a surprise? Of course not. The team's in complete rebuild. They got some decent players that are starting to prove some ground, but the team is definitely in complete rebuild, and they're going to need a couple seasons of definitely some hard work put into their players, their management, their staff, to get back into the playoff. First of all, and at the same time, get their management together and develop a stronger fan base. Ottawa, it's crazy. A couple seasons ago, Ottawa went all the way to like the conference final, and they all of a sudden just dropped out. And I saw it myself, and it was kind of very unexpected. An Ottawa team that was showing definitely strong numbers in attendance, even back when I first started this video with the 2015 and 16 results of attendance. Alright, so going up to number 30 was the Islanders last season. Now, Islanders is kind of tough. Going back in between the Barclays Center and the Coliseum, which sits obviously less after they renovated it. I think it only sits 17,000 now. Maybe less than that, I never know. But the Barclays Center, which is obviously an arena that's not even built for hockey, it's kind of iffy here and there, but it's predicted for sure by many analysts and all people around the league that once they get that Belmont Park built, they will be their attendance will definitely go up, because the true Island fans will definitely come out of the boroughs and definitely cheer on their team as they're beginning to play better and better in the upcoming seasons. At least that's predicted. So going up to number 29, which surprisingly is above the Islanders, is the Florida Panthers. Now, the Florida Panthers is one of the few teams, between them and the Coyotes, the Florida Panthers are probably almost at the bottom of the bottom right now, in terms of attendance, in terms of how the team's been playing the last couple of seasons. I don't remember the last time they made the playoffs. It might have been the early 2010s. I don't remember. Well, it might have been 2011. No, that was the Sabres. Anyways, attendance is obviously a huge problem in Florida. I've heard talks like, oh, we should move the team downtown to Miami. People will argue, no, that attendance is going to get worse. Nobody's going to go to Miami to see a hockey game. People go to Miami to go to the beaches, to go to the parties. Nobody wants to go to hockey in Miami. Now, it's interesting because you look at the other team that's on the other side of the peninsula, Tampa Bay. They're doing fine in attendance. They're doing perfectly fine. The team's successful. Yeah, the team got blown out in the playoffs last year in the first round, but the team's been making the playoffs for a number of years now, and they've got cups behind them. Florida has not won a cup since it's been a franchise. Yes, it's made the playoffs. Yes, it's gotten decently far in the playoffs, but it's never won the Stanley Cup. And it's going to be a reason that's definitely going to let the franchise down. They got to make some moves. They got decent players now. This last trade deadline, they acquired a few players, two of which from Carolina, Eric Haula, and if I'm corrected, Warren Fogle. So those are players that Carolina was not expecting to lose, and everybody was kind of surprised because they were just making their mark in Carolina as the team made the playoffs last year, etc. So Florida's really an unexpected team, ranking in 29th of attendance last year, averaging 14,000 is not terrible, considering the two teams above it also ranked 14,000, which we're about to talk about. But I don't know. They're kind of a team that has to start making moves here, and they got to make the playoffs. The first thing, just like Carolina did. Once they make the playoffs, the fans will definitely. I mean, they might be front runners, but they'll be there, and they'll show more support and be there when the team needs them for their support in the playoff run. So I would say first, you want to develop your attendance for the Florida Panthers, make the playoffs again. Now, obviously, they've acquired, like not last year, over the summer and stuff, they acquired people like such as Bobrovsky, the goalie, which I think they paid too much money for, but that's another story for another time. So there's too many moves to talk about. I might talk about the Florida Panthers in another video, because there's a lot of things that they can do to make the team better, that either they're avoiding or they're trying to do, and it's just not working. But we'll get to that. So going up to the fourth from the bottom team, we have the Arizona Coyotes. Now, Arizona averaging 14,605 as of last year. Arizona's a team that I think is definitely going to start to slowly gain back their not only attendance, but gain back their speed and skill as a franchise. I mean, obviously, yeah, they got Phil Kessel briefly. They got Taylor Hall. I mean, these guys are making some decent. I mean, the Coyotes are making some decent acquisitions now. I mean, yeah, these players are a little older. Taylor Hall is still young, of course. I mean, Taylor Hall, come on, let's see. The guy was kind of useless in New Jersey. When he started in Edmonton, he was practically a ghost because McDavid and Nugent Hopkins just stole the show. So, obviously, yeah, Coyotes have made great acquisitions, and they're definitely a team that I expect to go up. Maybe not in attendance right now, but in terms of skill level and in terms of in the West and the division that they're in, getting better within the next 1 or 2 seasons. We'll see how that goes. And then the top 5 from the bottom is the excuse me, New Jersey Devils. New Jersey Devils, I'm kind of surprised they're not at the bottom 3. They were a big disappointment, obviously. Last year. Am I thinking about last year? No, I'm thinking about this year. With the acquisition of Subban and when they had Simmons before he went to Buffalo, there was so much expected out of the team over the summer. It's kind of crazy to think about it. With Subban, Simmons, they still had Taylor Hall on the team, and they still had, of course, Hughes, the guy that was the #1 overall pick, and the team just really didn't show anything. This could be another video as well. What happened to the New Jersey Devils is really the biggest question of this past season. I was expecting them to easily, if not easily, just at least make it into the playoffs, and curious to see how far they would go. And they just really put a big disappointment on it. You know, Subban got all the hype over the summer, and nothing came of it. And Subban's like, I'm doing what I can, doing my best, and there's not much showing for the organization. And there's a lot of questions arising about their decisions. That was, oh my God, what was that goal? That was, God, Lordy. Oh, wow, there's Caps fans there. Anyways, but yeah, there's a lot of questions about the New Jersey State right now, and especially what's going to happen next year, for example. They don't make the playoffs again. After acquiring all these people, giving away them. They're quite the interesting franchise to talk about. But yeah, so that's the bottom 5 from last year's attendance numbers. Obviously, I mentioned the top 5 already. 1 through 5 being Chicago, Montreal, Dallas, Toronto, and Tampa. kind of expected top five, whether it's hockey being very successful there in the past couple of seasons, or hockey being big enough or growing, definitely in the areas. In terms of the teams, as of last season, besides the top five that have been consistent in their attendance the last couple of seasons, I mean, you can easily say Washington, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. I'm not going to count Vegas, obviously. They've only been like two or three. They've only been in like 3 seasons in the league. Boston. I mean, Boston's a couple questions there, whether attendance was going to get swayed or not, because when they got the new seats in the arena last summer, there was a lot of people criticizing that the arena was the seats in the arena were too tight, and the leg room was completely decreased, and a lot of fans were discouraged and not happy at all with results. And the media basically put it out there, and the people in the arena answered some of those questions, and they made some adjustments, and now things kind of seem to be kind of easing. Last I saw, and it was interesting because another play like that, there was a similar situation like that. If you look at Little Caesars Arena when that first opened for the Detroit Red Wings a few seasons ago, after leaving Joe Louis Arena, all the seats in the arena were actually red, and there was a big dispute over that. And long story short, they ended up changing the whole lower bowl seats to gray or black or something like that. And there's a lot of fans can be very critical of things like that, and it's important too, because obviously you don't want to be the hottest team in the league and not have nobody in your games in person. So in a team like Washington Capitals, for example, I think if they keep playing like they're playing now, like even if they don't get another cup again for a couple more years, Ovi got his first cup in 2018, congrats. But going forward, I mean, we'll have to see how it goes. But it's expected Washington's attendance is definitely going to go up and up and up and up. Because since the team has won the cup in 2018, the confidence level is just up there, and it's not giving up, and it's not stopping, and neither will its attendance numbers, as long as they're going far into the playoffs. I mean, early exit last year, it's not really a big deal. They just kind of wipe it off their shoulder and continue on. This is an interesting game. This is a very interesting game. Yeah, I kind of just put this. So that's kind of just a quick word on the numbers there from this past year, and then obviously comparing it to like 4 or 5 seasons ago. Maybe I'll do a future video down the road, me or Eric will, about other franchises in general, and for example, whether it's the Hartford Whalers or the Quebec Nordiques or the old Winnipeg Jets, and reactions and stuff, obviously, when the team had left, and for people like the Winnipeg Jets, how it came back and the whole area was revitalized and everything got good again with some of those cities. And obviously some teams that lost their cities, Hartford, Quebec, Atlanta, some of those fan bases are showing off bigger and definitely still wanting a team back. So we'll definitely get to that. Appreciate you watching this video. This game is very interesting. Pittsburgh 2043, and it's still the first period because I simmed the regular length periods. I didn't know how long this video was going to be. So I appreciate you watching this video. I'm going to watch the rest of this game while I log off this video, and comment, rate, subscribe. Many more videos to come. Probably will do videos on MLB attendance. And if Eric, you're watching this video, you can definitely chime in with that one and join me for that one. NFL attendance might be an if, I don't know, because a lot of NFL teams are really close in attendance besides the bottom few. But and then yeah, we'll go from there. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy the upcoming videos, and feel free to follow our Instagram and other social media accounts such as Twitter. And we will see you guys real soon. Appreciate it.